The letter was never supposed to surface. A restricted dossier sealed for more than 10 years, hidden away in a long-forgotten vault at Quantico. No heading, no rank, no ceremony. Only a single code name pressed in faded ink across its surface. Iron Wolf. For years, nobody knew who the name pointed to until someone cracked it open. And the moment they did, nothing remained the same. Before we dive in, if you believe respect should be earned instead of mocked, hit like, subscribe, and share where you're watching from. Because once the call sign Iron Wolf is spoken in this tale from Old Bill's Tales, the air grows still, the room freezes, and everything shifts forever. The dawn at Fort Redstone carried a biting chill, the quiet heavy with expectation. This was where future Marine leaders were forged, a place where discipline wasn't asked for, it was imposed. And yet Sarah Whitaker, standing alone at the far edge of the yard, felt a silence that wasn't honor but judgment. Late 20s, reserved, steady, a fresh transfer from the medic corps. Her attire gleamed, her boots shone like mirrors, her stance exact. But no polish could mask the whispers that clung to her. A few cadets smirked when they passed. Others didn't bother lowering their voices. Why is she even here? Probably begged for entry. Medics don't belong in command school. She stood still, hands locked behind her, eyes ahead. Yet every laugh, every sly glance, every barb she absorbed in silence. Then appeared Lieutenant Blake Morgan, 26, self-assured, dripping with the arrogance built into him from day one. He walked like command was his by birthright, not effort. He halted just short of her, his smirk like a blad's edge. Transfer? Huh? He muttered loud enough to draw ears. Sergeant Whitaker, she corrected flatly, eyes unmoved. Not here, Morgan shot back. Here, you're just another cadet trying to keep pace. The group behind him chuckled. One muttered about medics playing soldier. Another scoffed that she probably earned her spot with pity points. Sarah didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't react, but her stillness wasn't weakness because Sarah Whitaker knew long ago that the loudest in a room usually had the least worth saying. By nightfall, the whispers hardened into open mockery. In the locker room, Morgan leaned on a bench, retelling the morning's exchange to eager ears. She corrected me, he said, mocking her in a shrill tone. Sergeant Whitaker, he barked a laugh, drawing more from the pack. Bet she can't even strip a rifle without searching it online. One scoffed. She'll wash out in a week. Another piled on. At the far end, Sarah unlaced her boots, calm, deliberate. She stayed quiet. She didn't argue. Yet one cadet saw what the rest ignored. Corporal Nina Taus, sharp and watchful, caught how Sarah folded her uniform with care into her locker. As she did, a small worn patch slipped out and hit the floor. Na snatched it up before anyone else noticed. Her gaze locked on the stitching. 3 words, black thread on faded gray Iron Wolf unit. Her breath caught. The phrase stirred something faintly familiar, like whispers from a late briefing or a story overheard that she wasn't supposed to hear. She slipped it back discreetly. Sarah accepted it without a word, tucked it into her jacket, locked the door, and left without a glance back. 2 weeks crawled by and the joke sharpened. Morgan made sure of it. During a morning combat drill, he raised his voice for all to hear. Careful out there, Whitaker, he jeered. Wouldn't want those medic hands bruised. Laughter rolled across the field. Sarah ignored it as always, but Nina, watching from the side, caught something off. Sarah wasn't watching Morgan or their jokes. Her eyes kept sweeping the ridgeline above the course, narrowing slightly. That evening, long after drills ended, Sarah walked the perimeter alone. Her boots crunched the gravel as her hand brushed along the cold fence. She paused where the trees pressed near, gaze fixed on a corner camera high on its post. Earlier it had flickered. Just 1.7 seconds. Almost nobody would have noticed, but Sarah did. She pulled a battered notebook from her pocket, scribbled something down, and moved on. Almost nobody would have noticed, but Sarah did. She pulled a worn notebook from her pocket, scribbled a note, and kept walking. That evening, while most cadets filled the Massal, the strategy room was arranged for a briefing. Rows of recruits packed the seats, their chatter low and restless. Lieutenant Blake Morgan lounged at the front, legs crossed, that smug grin never leaving his face. Then as the lights dimmed, the projector froze mid-screen. A low chime rang through the hall. A sudden notification appeared across the instructor's console. Restricted access login authorization code Aaron Wolf Ein. A ripple of unease spread across the recruits. The instructor frowned, tapping keys to override, but the system refused to budge. Then Sarah's tablet sitting untouched on her desk buzzed once. She glanced down. One new message. No sender, no subject, just 4 words glowing on the display. Aaron Wolf, stand by. Her hand froze mid-air, pulse quickening in her chest. Across the aisle, Nina Torres caught the faint flash of text. Her eyes widened, lips parting as realization slowly crept across her features. Aaron Wolf. She didn't fully know what it meant. Not precisely, but she knew one thing with certainty. Sarah Whitaker was no ordinary cadet. Somewhere, someone had just summoned her back. Hours later, long past lights out, Sarah sat cross-legged on her bunk in silence. Her notebook lay open across her lap, filled with scrolled coordinates, times, and patterns, the kind of details no one else seemed to catch. She turned to the latest page, her pen tracing over the words she had written. Aaron Wolf, 01 authorization active. She closed the book carefully, slid it under her pillow, and leaned against the wall. Outside, a biting wind rattled the windows, blinds clinking against the glass. Deep in the facility, encrypted servers processed the override command, firing alerts into networks far above Fort Redstone's clearance. Miles away, inside a sealed operations center, a man in a pressed uniform bent over his glowing console as the alert filled his screen. Colonel James Rorden. He froze, jaw tight, fingers curling into a fist. The words blinked once before vanishing into locked encryption. Aaron Wolf protocol reactivated. For a long moment he stood silent. Then, almost like a vow spoken to ghosts, he muttered, "Aaron Wolf activated." With that, he grabbed his cap and strode from the room without hesitation. Because whenever that code name resurfaced, it meant one thing. Someone at Fort Redstone had no idea who they were mocking. But they were about to learn. The signal was sent. The protocols were alive again. And in the dead of night, unseen wheels began to turn, far beyond anything the cadets could imagine. By morning, the atmosphere on base was different. The air weighed heavier. Conversations once light with jokes now carried a nervous edge. In the training hall, cadets slid into their rows, their voices hushed but uneasy. The strange override, the encrypted message, the night's disruption, it was all they whispered about. Yet Lieutenant Blake Morgan appeared untouched. He leaned against the podium, flipping notes with the lazy arrogance of a man who thought the world revolved around him. "Guess the medic's tricks already," he announced smugly, loud enough for nearby rows to hear. "Probably hacked the system for attention." A few uneasy chuckles followed, but laughter was thinner than before. The tension felt like glass, ready to crack underfoot. Sarah Whitaker sat calmly at the rear, her tablet closed, her posture composed. Her expression revealed nothing, though her breath moved steady and controlled. From 2 rows up, Nina Torres cast a glance back, lowering her voice. "Sarah," she whispered. "Last night, the message." Sarah gave no reply. Her eyes stayed forward, unblinking. But Na noticed her fist clenched firm against her knee despite her stillness. Then the lights flickered once, then again, and then the hall went black. A low murmur swept through the room. The outage lasted only 7 seconds. But when the lights flared back, something had changed. The central monitors glowed with a fresh notification. No code, no clearance prompt, just one name pulsed in bright white letters. "Call James Rorden inbound." At first it was faint, the sound of measured steps echoing in the corridor. Then came the thud of boots on marble, steady, intentional, exact. The double doors at the hall's end swung wide, and a presence stepped in that hushed the entire room without uttering a word. Colonel James Rorden, late 40s, broad-shouldered, decorated. His chest carried rows of ribbons, rank insignia gleaming in the stark lights. But it wasn't the uniform that froze them. It was the weight he carried, the kind only borne by someone who had led men into places they were never meant to return from, and brought them back alive. Rorden said nothing at first. He let the silence breathe, his gaze sweeping until it locked onto Sarah Whitaker. For the first time since setting foot in Fort Redstone, Sarah shifted in her seat. Not in fear, not in shock, but recognition. Rorden moved forward, each step clicking sharply on the polished floor. When he spoke, his voice was calm, low, but rolled like thunder. "Iron Wolf, stand by." The hall froze. Blake Morgan, seated at the front, blinked in confusion. "Wait, what?" Rorden's eyes narrowed, his head turning slightly. Sergeant Sarah Whitaker, front and center. Sarah rose, not rushed, not shaken, but with the quiet precision of someone long accustomed to harsher orders. Her boots struck the floor in steady rhythm as she walked the aisle and stopped before him. The colonel's stance remained sharp, yet his tone softened just a fraction. "Good to see you again, Iron Wolf." Gas rippled across the room. Cadets traded bewildered looks, whispers rising before dying instantly under his gaze. Morgan leaned back, arms crossed, a smirk still clinging to his face. "This some kind of performance?" he muttered. She's just a transfer, a medic. We, Rorden turned on him, eyes locking with steel. Lieutenant, he said coldly, at ease. You've said enough. Something in that tone made Morgan's jaw lock tight. For the first time since Sarah arrived, his arrogance faltered. Rorden let silence stretch before continuing. You think you know who trains beside you? His gaze swept the room. You think rank and ribbons tell the story? He shook his head, his voice steady, layered with pride and memory. You haven't a clue who she is. The hall was still. No one even breathed. 7 years ago, he went on, a covert team executed an unsanctioned rescue during Dawson Ridge. 12 Marines were trapped. Standard extractions failed. The mission was written off as lost. He let the words hang, his eyes never leaving Sarah. Then a single operator, call sign Iron Wolf, led a 4-person squad straight into hostile ground. No air cover, no reinforcements, no chance. 47 minutes later, every one of those Marines was walking free. He drew a breath. She commanded that unit. A heavy silence fell like a curtain. Chairs creaked as cadets straightened unconsciously, trying to grasp the weight of what they had just heard. She didn't just inherit that name, Rorden said. She carved it. He stepped closer to Sarah, voice dropping, not in secrecy but reverence. And she saved my life. Gasps cut through the air. Nina Torres stared wide-eyed, chest rising fast with disbelief. Even Morgan, mouth half open in search of words, slumped back into his seat, color draining from his face. Rorden faced him fully, his tone like a blade. You mocked her, he said quietly, but the quiet cut deeper than any shout. You called her weak, unworthy. Morgan tried to recover, sitting straighter. I didn't know who she was, he stammered. That's exactly the point, Lieutenant Roan answered. You never asked. He turned back to the cadets, voice firm, commanding final. From this point on, you will address her properly. Sergeant Sarah Whitaker, Iron Wolf Unit. And if you believe this is about rank, he paused, gaze sweeping every face in the hall, then you are not ready to lead Marines. And then something none of them expected unfolded. A lone cadet at the back slowly rose, heels together, and snapped into a salute. Another followed, then another. Within seconds, the hall was alive with the sharp crack of boots. Back straight, arms raised, hundreds of salutes in perfect unison. For the first time since arriving at Fort Redstone, Sarah Whitaker stood before them, silent, her expression unreadable, yet her presence unshakable. And in that silence, the atmosphere shifted. She was no longer just a transfer. She wasn't the medic they ridiculed or the outsider they whispered about. She was Iron Wolf, and every soul in that hall now knew it. But Colonel Rorden wasn't finished. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. They see it now, he murmured. But this isn't about them. Sarah's jaw tightened. Then who is it about? His gaze hardened. Someone's watching this base, he said flatly. Someone who shouldn't be. Sarah's eyes narrowed, her fingers curling at her side. Then it starts again, she whispered, roared and gave a single nod. Welcome back, Iron Wolf. The salutes dropped, but the silence clung. Sarah Whitaker, once the medic they mocked. The transfer they dismissed was revealed as Iron Wolf. And as the cadets tried to process the weight of that revelation, Colonel James Rorden's warning echoed in her mind. Someone's watching this base. That night, heavy rain hammered Fort Redstone. Sarah sat on the edge of her bunk, her encrypted tablet glowing with the same 4 words. Iron Wolf, stand by. Before she could think it through, alarms ripped through the compound. Breach detected. West perimeter. Cadets spilled from bunks. Orders flew. Sirens screamed across the base. Within minutes, the strategy hall swelled with chaos. Rorden stood at the center, firing commands with precision. Lock down Alpha. Seal the gates. Secure the armory. But a young officer's voice cut through, shaky and pale. Sir, they're not breaching from outside. Rorden spun sharply. What? Internal sensors triggered. Whoever's inside was already here. The room froze. His eyes went straight to Sarah. South wing. Take Torres, move. Sarah seized her sidearm. And in seconds, she and Nina Torres were sprinting down the corridors, boots slamming against polished floors as they pushed into shadowed halls. The passageways were hushed, lit only by the faint flicker of emergency lights. Then Sarah spotted it. A vent panel by the security feed, freshly disturbed. They've been here, she muttered. Then came a sound, faint, subtle, the scuff of a boot behind them. Sarah leveled her weapon. Step out. From the dark, a figure emerged in black fatigues carrying suppressed gear. No Marine unit carried. He froze only an instant before lunging. Now fired. The intruder dodged and bolted down the hall. Sarah didn't wait. She gave chase, tearing through twisting corridors until they spilled into the lower maintenance wing. She skidded to a halt at the corridor's end. That's when she saw it, a device affixed to the main security panel blinking silently. She ripped it loose, turning it over in her hand. Not foreign tech, not random sabotage. U.S. military issue. Someone inside had authorized this breach. By dawn, the sirens had faded. The infiltrators were gone, leaving no casualties, no stolen gear, just planted devices and grim questions. This wasn't an attack, Sarah said, dropping the device onto the table with a sharp clink. They weren't here to destroy anything. Roden's face darkened. No, he said quietly. They were testing us. Across the room, Lieutenant Blake Morgan, the same man who mocked her since day one, stepped forward hesitantly. His arrogance was gone, replaced with unease. I didn't know, he muttered. Sarah studied him, unreadable. Finally, she answered. Now you do. As dawn crept over Fort Redstone, Sarah stood beneath the rain-soaked awning, her eyes fixed on the misty horizon. The call sign buried years ago was alive again, Iron Wolf. And someone out there wanted to see if she had forgotten who she was. They were mistaken, because Sarah Whitaker wasn't there to fit in. She wasn't there to impress. She was there to lead, and now the entire base knew exactly who she